Well, hello and welcome to another video of mine. Today, I'm going to discuss how, and more importantly, why you might want to draw birds. Aside from being beautiful animals, at least in my opinion, I know some people find them a little creepy. I love birds. And what more reason do you need to draw something than loving it? I think there are some very useful, foundational skills that you can get drawing birds that are very useful, especially when you're just starting out. So, why draw bird? I have a list of reasons why here. Number one, this is my personal biggest reason, gesture. Gesture can be really hard to wrap your head around when you're drawing people. You've got like the shoulders, whatever the hips are doing, right? Gesture for drawing people is a little more complicated. But when you're just drawing a bird, gesture is very simple. It's almost drawing any bird. It can more or less be broken down into a T shape, at least in flight. And it's just the shape and complexity of these curves that really dictate what the bird is doing, where the bird is going, and how quick they're moving. So in that alone, drawing birds is very useful to get a more nuanced understanding of perspective, the line of action, all that good stuff. Number two reason is there is a lot of motion and action and, dynamic, interesting shapes when you draw birds. So the action of drawing a bird, I think, is a really big one. Birds you can get really crazy shapes where their wings come up like this. When they're taking off or landing, you'll get their claws come out to grab a fish or a rodent or whatever so that you can get really dynamic bird shapes, especially with birds of hunting birds. Number three, I guess I'm numbering these now, is simplicity of form. Drawing a person or most mammals, they're very complicated. For birds, most of the time, you either are dealing with legs and a body and head, or you're dealing with wings and a body and head. But most of the time, you're not drawing all four limbs at the same time, and you don't have to spend as much attention to each of them. A bird in flight, you'll get their body, you'll get the wings, and their feet will be tucked up under there, and then you just have the head and beak. And then when they're standing, just kind of hanging around, you'll get their head and neck, and then their big chonky body and tail, and then you'll have their feet. So usually, aside from when they're taking off, landing, or grabbing onto something while in flight, you don't see all four limbs, and you don't have to focus on all four. So that alone, it simplifies the form and make things a little easier. But more than that, the body of a bird is almost a cylinder, except it's a kind of shaped like an airfoil where the top is a little bit more curved than the bottom to provide lift for the bird. So they're a very simple shape geometrically. They're simple to draw. Perspective, drawing a human like I've just drawn here, one half of the body is doing something else than the other half. But in a bird, if you bisect them, down the center, like if I had a plane here that was bisecting this bird, the left half and the right half are doing the same thing. In flight, unless you're doing incredible acrobatic movements like you'll see in a hawk or something, to maintain stability during flight, you need both sides to be doing the same thing. So you'll see symmetry, and that makes it much easier to draw in perspective, because you don't have to figure out what one side's doing and then the other side's doing something else. No, they're both working in harmony. What you do on one side, you do on the other side. This is a big one to me. I think shape design, all the different ways that a bird can move, they are beautiful, dynamic creatures. And you can take advantage of that and get really expressive shapes, right? Especially in beaks and in wings, you can make them sharp or soft. You can do all kinds of things. And then another one, speed. Because of all the things I've said earlier about why they're easy to draw, you can draw them quickly. And in that, you can get a lot of mileage. You can get a lot of, work done. You can do a lot of practice in less time. And the more you draw, the more things you draw, the more completed drawings you can do, the quicker you will advance in your journey to learn how to draw anything. So, okay. I'm going to start now with some light anatomy. If you're a little squeamish, you don't want to see a dissected bird, you can skip past this. But bird anatomy is really quite simple. The main thing is their head, their body, and their wings. And it can be, really confusing to look at first, like what are all these shapes? Why are they bending all these different ways? But we'll break it down. It's really not too different from people when you get into the weeds of it. So here, this is the anatomy of a wing here. And at first glance, you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. But it's really not as bad as you might think. This right here is the humerus, the upper arm of a bird. And then this is the ulna, and this is the radius. Actually, I might have those backwards. This one might be the radius, that one might be the ulna. Either way, this is basically the upper arm, this is the forearm, and this is a very specialized adaptation of what in humans became our hands, in birds became the tip of their wings. So this is the metacarpal, and these are the two carpal joints. Birds have kind of simplified and streamlined their anatomy to serve in flight. So they got rid of a lot of useless bones and they fused bones together to make them stronger and all that good stuff. Here you can see some good examples of how birds move their arms in different ways. So this one, the humerus is going back and forward. So you can think of that like you're bending your elbow and kind of tucking it behind you a little bit. And then they're putting their arm up, or their hand up right here. This one, it's basically the equivalent of holding your arm out to your side. And then this one, it's kind of like holding your arm out and tucking your arm into your side and pointing your hand down. And these are more or less the different ways that birds will move, and you'll see them in flight. So, okay, for those squeamish, this is a dissected bird to show you some of the muscles. But here, this is the pectoralis major. It is the largest muscle in birds, and it is the main thrust muscle when they flap to get up off the ground or to hold their wings steady in flight. That's the chest muscle, the pectoralis major. And then they have a few interesting adapted muscles. This one is kind of like in humans what might have become the brachialis. In birds, it kind of, instead of connecting here, it connects straight to the wrist, and that helps keep the wings steady during flight and in takeoff. And then here, these are all the forearm muscles. This is the bicep and the tricep. So really, they have all the same parts. This is the deltoid, and then here's that adapted muscle, and then here's the forearm muscles that you'll see in humans and most other mammals. Now, the feet are similar to the wings in that superfluous bones have been discarded and some bones have kind of fused together. So this is actually all the foot of a bird. This is the metatarsals, where you can see they've kind of fused into one big mass. They are technically individual bones in here. There's 3 of them that connect to each of the 3 toes. But really they function as one solid bone. Kind of like how your skull, it may have different bones, but really it functions as one big piece. And then here's another look at the legs. So this is the humerus. These are the tibia and fibula here. And then this part here is typically covered by feathers or layers of fat and what have you. So you don't see it. But down here, this is what most people think of will be a bird's knee. It is actually their ankle. This is the bird ankle, and then this all here is their foot. So that's kind of a quick overview on bird anatomy. Let's get into some, simplifying gestures of birds and really good reasons to draw birds. So, okay. So here are a few birds in flight that I thought would be good to... There we go. That would be good to demonstrate some gesture and also demonstrate the symmetry that I was talking about earlier, where in perspective, both sides of the bird's body are doing the same thing. So here, this is a hawk. And if we were to think of the line of action, the line of action is, where is the force? Where is the body moving? Well, the body is moving forward. This hawk, it's looking there, and its whole body is moving in the arc that it's flying in. So, and then the wings are supporting it. And you can see here, this is kind of where the wings are holding up the weight of the body. And then here, this is where the wings are pushing up against the air, and the air is pushing the wings up. That's why you get this kind of lift here and this curve here. It functions as sort of the most efficient shape to hold the bird aloft. And there are some aerodynamic reasons that this is a very efficient shape to fly through the air as well. But for the most part, it's just to conserve energy in flight. Flight is a very expensive thing to do. It calorically, it consumes a lot of energy to fly through the air. So whatever birds can evolve to do to save on that energy, they've done. Here, this is a very dynamic action shot of a bird, where it's just taking off or landing or trying to gain speed as quickly as it can. And you can see here, it's really pulling its wings back as far as it can in an effort to gain lift and motion. And you can see it, even on the individual feathers, they're splayed out because they're gripping the air and trying to push up against it. And you get a really nice, almost perfectly symmetrical shape. And then here the body is almost like just a cylinder, right? And then the tail is a nice kind of fan shape. So here, this is a little dove, I think. And you can see again, very simple gesture, just these kinds of shapes. And even just drawing this alone, where you get the directional motion of the body with the head pointing where it's going, and then you get a wing shape and a tail shape. You can just kind of put a little point on the end here, and this already looks like a bird or a kite or a plane. These are all aerodynamic machines that are made to fly through the air, and they all kind of have this similar looking shape because it's the best way to fly. So here, really dynamic shapes. You can see like the gesture in this one might be a little hard to see, but really it's just this. It's two kind of C curves where one is a little funky on the end, and that's the gesture of this bird. It all flows together. And the thing I love about drawing birds is to be aerodynamic, they're all curves and soft shapes. And then here, this is one of the rare instances where you'll see all four limbs and the tail of a bird. And really, here, it looks like chaos, you're thinking. I have no idea where to start drawing that. But if you just think of the gesture, it's a C curve here and a C curve here. Well, they kind of overlap a little bit, but just like that. This is the gesture of the bird. And you can see they're pulling against each other. This one's going this way. This one's going this way. And that's because the bird is moving this way, but it wants to stop. It wants to slow down because it wants to approach as fast as it can and then stop and grab the thing and flap away and make off with its catch, its mouse or whatever. So all of this, its wings, its tail, these are all open as much as it can to grip the air and stop itself as quickly as possible. So, okay, that's kind of how to think about the gesture of a bird. Let's work out some silhouettes. How to draw just the basic shapes of a bird. So now these are some photos that I've taken myself, actually, and I'll just try to talk about drawing the silhouette as a way of simplifying the bird, because you can get caught up in a lot of details that when you're learning how to draw birds, you're learning how to draw in general, they're more a distraction than they are useful to you. They may make a drawing really interesting to have all these details, but you don't want to start with them. You want to work your way up to those details. You need to make sure that you're starting with a cohesive whole drawing before you get into the minutiae of the feathers and light and shadow. So starting with silhouettes is a really great place to start. It kind of forces you to focus on the action and the gesture of the drawing. So here, I think you might be starting to see that, again, here's the gesture. The bird is kind of, we're looking up at it, and we're looking at it from behind as it's flying away from us. So in perspective, it's actually tilted a little bit. You can see it's tilted like this. So that would mean it's turning through the air like that. And you can see its whole body is moving in that direction through the air. This is why birds are such a great starting point for learning gesture and the line of action, because this is the line of action right here. Its motion is going right through the air and its body follows that. And then the wings are there to keep it aloft and keep it moving through the air. So here it's mid-downstroke, just to kind of gain some lift or some speed, what's going on. And you can see the motion is very, very simple. It's just gliding through the air. So to draw this, well, the first thing you have to start with is is the gesture. You know, the bird's wings come up like this. They go across the body and they come down. And there's this kind of relation where, because it's tilted in midair and the plane of perspective is kind of shifted to the side, you know, it's gonna, like if we're thinking what's the perspective of the bird, it's kind of something like this. So then here's from one wing to the other, and then from the tail to the head. And if you follow on the bird, the length of the wing here is pretty much the same, right? Like from here to here is the same distance on the other side from here to here. So the tail feathers are going to be pretty much in the middle of this C curve, this arch in the wings. And then that's where you'll place your line of action, which is where the body is moving through. So, okay. We have our simple gesture, and then the bird's body is again this kind of airfoil shape where the top of the body is a little more heavily curved than the bottom. This just helps to provide extra lift for the bird. So if we start sort of from the head here, you know, its tail feathers are here, and then it curves up and down to the head, and that's the body of the bird. Its tail feathers are really quite flat because the tail feathers provide directional stability. They don't really provide lift themselves. And then the belly of the bird is a little more curved on the bottom, and then that leads up into the neck and the head. And then you have the beak and the shape of the face. So this is a seagull, and on seagulls, it's very an iconic shape to have a straight face, and then the beak curves on the top, and you get this kind of point on the bottom of the beak. This is a very iconic shape for a seagull. You'll see in movies like Finding Nemo, you know, all the seagulls, if you look at their beak, they kind of are just that kind of shape. And then they go up into the head. And this is the Finding Nemo seagull shape. But this beak shape is really integral to to keying in that it's a seagull. So we can draw that here too. Get the sort of the sharp downward angle of the head, and then its beak is like that. And the beak really smoothly flows into the bottom of the body. So there's the body of the bird. And then you have the one wing coming off this side and the other side, like that. And what you get is there's kind of two portions of feathers on the bird, where the feathers that are from the humerus, so this is the humerus, this is the radius and ulna, and then this is the hand, H2 for hand. So coming off of the humerus, and so basically this is the arm and this is the hand, you get two different sizes and styles of feathers. These are kind of more, they point straight down more, and then off of the hand you'll get a more radial pattern like this. And these are all flight feathers, but these are kind of like the base feathers and the tip feathers of the wing. And they serve different purposes. These ones are for stability. They provide lift on the wing. And these ones are for agility. They provide mobility for the wing, and they allow the wing to, with very subtle movement of the bird's motion, to fly through the air very efficiently. So that's why you get this kind of two-lobed shape to the wing. So you have the first lobe of sort of the base flight feathers, and then you have the tip feathers that come off like that. And you can almost see here there's 3 bumps here, and they more or less correspond to where the upper arm, lower arm, and hand bones are in the wing. So you get 1, 2, 3. And you get a more subtle version of that on this wing as well, where you see 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, sort of like that. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2. And then this is kind of our bird shape overall. I might have to add a little bit more thickness here to this wing. It's a little anemic. But if we just fill all this in now, it's a pretty convincing silhouette of the seagull. And there you go. That's our bird. Maybe add back in the tail feathers because they kind of got lost. And you can see, even just from the silhouette, it's a very dynamic shape. You kind of see all that's going on already. So I'll just do another one of these, another silhouette. Move this one over to there, and then I'll draw down here. So this time, we're seeing it where the bird is much more in kind of a steady state flight. It's really just kind of going straight through the air, and its wings are in a very relaxed sort of C-curve kind of shape. So the gesture on this one is a lot simpler than the last one already, just because this is perfectly straight, or just about. The curves in its body here are really just from the shape of the airfoil. But it's not moving down, it's not moving up. It's really just going straight through the air. So if I draw this one, let's get the bodies going pretty straight. It's in perspective, it's above us and it's going towards the horizon, so it kind of looks like it's going down, but in reality it's going straight through the air. And then you have the wings coming up off of it, and you get sort of it's kind of like an S shape to the wing, like that. And you have another one on the other side, and this is that iconic sort of bird flying to the horizon you'll see in movies or animation, where, you know, kind of looks like that, and then that, and then that again, and that's it's flapping its wings moving towards the horizon. So if I say right here, this is where the wing comes up, and you can see again, you get the two sort of lobed shape to the wing here. So we have the first lobe and the second. And then what I did with this wing, I will do for the other one, because they are parallel. And then if I just color this all in again, you get that nice kind of bird silhouette that we're going for. So I'm not at all focused on what the individual feathers are doing, just the overall form and shape of the bird. That's really what we're going for in these kind of exercises here. And there's our bird. Maybe made the head and face a bit too big, so I can trim that down. Something like that. And there's our seagull kind of flying away from us a little bit. So, okay. Let's do some standing birds now. Because this is also a very simple shape, where This is a female seagull, so she has a lot more pattern to her feathers. Male seagulls, you kind of just get the gray wings, and that's really all the pattern they have. Maybe you'll get a gray head, depending on the kind of seagull. But you don't want to get lost in the details of all these little dots and stuff in the pattern of the feathers. That's all noise you don't want to pay attention to at all. Really, the thing to focus on is, this is the skull right here. The neck comes out the back of the skull, and it's connected to the front of the rib cage. And then the feathers create this nice kind of flowing shape to the skull. And then the beak comes out. The wings can be a little complicated, but if you go back to the anatomy of the wing, you have the humerus coming down, the forearm coming up, and then the wrist and finger kind of thing coming down again. And the feathers bunch up kind of in these two lobes, which you see here and here. You get these two lobes to the wing when they're at rest. And then here you get some of the tail feathers here. And you get this big, powerful round chest and belly of the bird. This all from here to here, this is all the chest of the bird, where it's a big mass of muscle to provide lift and stability during flight. Now the legs, the feathers actually are very fluffy on most birds. The legs are kind of way up here, and they come down like this. So you don't see most of the legs. They're kind of tucked up in there. And what you end up seeing is just the kind of ankle and foot area. But if we are going to draw again, I'm going to focus on just the silhouette of this. Then what you end up with is you get kind of a oblong, spherical, or not even spherical, elliptical kind of shape for the body, where you get the big bow out for the chest, and then the wings cover up the back. And you can really simplify the wings into these two lobes here. And then you get the tail feathers coming out behind that. The head, we kind of showed earlier what this looks like, where it's that kind of shape, and then you get the beak coming off. And we want to remember the shape of the beak for a seagull is that kind of thing, right? So we'll get the shape of the face, which is really flat. And then you get the ankles. Now the ankles you don't want to draw like diamonds because they're not symmetrical. They're ankles. Even on humans, you see these kind of lumps where the tibia and fibula connect to the metatarsals, they're called. Those are the ankle bones. Or rather the tarsal bones in the human. In birds, they've all kind of fused into these longer bones, so they just have a metatarsal, really. Wait, no. No. The ankles are the metatarsals in humans, then the foot bones are the tarsal bones. Okay, I'm getting my anatomy mixed up here, sorry. But you'll see, even in humans, one side is higher than the other, and then you get sort of the foot shape. Well, it's the same in birds, where one side is higher up than the other, and you get a kind of angle across the two. Right. And then usually it's changing the angle as well because it's a joint. So if we draw this bird's little feetses, then they're kind of pushed back a little bit. But if you think about the total length of a bird from tail to front, they're a little further up to keep the balance, because you can kind of think of birds as bipeds where they stand on 2 feet. So to maintain that, their body has to be in balance so they don't tip forward or back. So the tail is a lot lighter than the head in front of the body, so it has to go further back. So then the tail is over here and over there. Midway through is somewhere around here. That's halfway. The feet are just further beyond that. So then we get 1 foot here. I got the angle of that wrong, hold on. So you have 1 foot, or 1 leg and foot coming off here. And then in this case, the feet are kind of hard to see because they're covered in water and they're covered behind the stone. So I'm going to kind of make it up a little bit, but it's more or less something like that. And then you have the other foot right next to it, kind of doing the same thing. And then if we just fill all this in, we'll lose some of the detail here in the wing because it's just a silhouette. So you'll lose kind of the 2-lobed nature of it. So you just get a nice, simple silhouette. And there's our seagull silhouette. I think maybe I need to add a little bit more here just to smoothen this transition over. It's like anatomically this is what it's doing, but because the feathers are so fluffy, it all kind of merges together. And there's our seagull. And different angles will show different parts of the birds, and different birds will look different. Here is a type of sparrow, but you can see it's all kind of the same basic principles, where you have the big chest, which is very fluffy in this bird's case, and then you get the same kind of 2-lobed nature to the wing, and then you get the tail, and it connects up. And even a little tiny bird like this, its neck is still kind of doing that. But because of the feathers, you really don't see any of that detail. You just get kind of just bare hint of a angle change here where the neck feathers meet the feathers from the torso. And then this one has a very sharp, pointy little beak. More meant for eating bugs than eating fish and rodents like you can see on a seagull. But this one you can see even its ankles are covered by feathers because it's so fluffy. But you get a much better angle of the 3 toes and the thumb, or their big toe that they have. So again, if you're going to draw this silhouette, start with the big shapes, start with kind of the chest that swoops all the way back into the tail, and you get the upper body kind of comes down like that, and then you have the wing here. And then you got its little adorable birdie head with its beak and cute eye. And then its feet kind of coming out like that. So birds, they're very simple geometric shapes, really. And they're very smooth because, rough or sharp angles they're not very aerodynamic. So they smooth over all these, bony features and muscular features with soft feathers that provide a nice, smooth flow through the air. Sorry for the interruption here, but I'm editing the video together right now, and I kind of noticed that there's a bit of a jump from the clip you just saw, me drawing the silhouettes of birds, to where it's going, which will be drawing birds in perspective. And I just wanted to add this in to kind of explain why the clips are different. I recorded the clip you're about to see before the other one, actually. And I forgot to do this section when I was re-recording the video. But I want to include it, so I'm kind of just cutting it in now. So now I'll explain how to draw a bird in perspective, and then after that I will just do a drawing of a bird, and you'll get to see that. Okay, thanks for bearing with me. I'm still getting used to doing these videos. How would you draw a bird in perspective? So think of the head of a bird. If I were to draw a bird sort of flying towards me or in my general direction, but where it would fly past me, so you get kind of a 3/4 view. You start with the head. In general, the head is usually a great starting point for just about any animal or drawing. But let's get the head in. Draw your center line. And then you'll get the body is really, like I said, it is an airfoil shape where the top is kind of longer than the bottom, but it's still an animal, so it has to have some degree of anatomy. From the top of the head, the feathers will cover up the neck. Necks kind of attach sort of right here off of birds. They're right off the back, and they're really kind of skinny, and they can be kind of long too. That's sort of the spine of the bird right there, and then that connects to the rib cage. So you'll see the spine of the bird kind of goes over and down like that into the feather, and then it kind of cuts off like that. And then you get this sort of shape for the rib cage, where it comes over like that, and then you get the hips right here. So okay, what is the perspective of the bird? It's drawing a 2-point perspective drawing here, where we're almost kind of looking down at it a little bit. Something like that. And then the wings are going to come out at this kind of angle. So this is all covered up with feathers, and then you get the tail. So the body of a bird is quite curved around here, and then it gets flatter and flatter, and then at the tail, the curve starts to go the other way a little bit, and then it splays out because the feathers are catching the air, and they're lifting up the sides a little more than they're lifting up the center because the sides are not supported by the feathers around them. And then, so this is the body of our bird. And then the wings, they attach quite high because they're effectively the shoulders and upper arm of the bird. So the top of it will come from here and here. And what you'll see, because they both wings always, or almost always, unless they're doing extreme acrobatic moves, but general flight and how birds behave, they'll move their wings together. You'll see that whatever you have for one wing, you'll get for the other. So you just try to, in perspective, draw one wing, then draw the other. And I'm kind of drawing straight lines to simulate what the bone would be doing. And then you'll get sort of from the elbow to the wrist, from the elbow to the wrist, and then you'll get the fingers, or the hand, more or less. And the wings have a kind of interesting way that they connect, where the flight feathers are connected to the body feathers, and every species of bird does it a little differently, but in general you'll get really little feathers, and then they'll kind of fade out like in a radial direction, like that, into the flight feathers, and then the flight feathers will come out like this, and then you'll see them kind of do the same thing, where across the wing they'll slowly form a radius. But in most birds, especially on the body, you don't really see the individual feathers. They just look very smooth because they're so tightly packed together to provide a good smooth surface for air to flow over. So you kind of just see the flight feathers appear here, and then they go out here, and then you'll get the tip feathers, which are usually a little longer, the tip feathers, and then you'll see individual feathers really along here. And then you'll get the same kind of thing here, except because we have this plane break from the elbow, it'll look kind of a little wonky, where it seems to get thin and then thick again going out to the tip feathers. So you can kind of think of wings as being in three distinct sections, where that's where they will bend, because that's more or less how they work. They're in three sections, and the first two sections, the feathers very smoothly transition from one to the other, and then in the third section you'll get the tip feathers, which are much larger, more durable, meant to support their own weight instead of relying on the feathers around them to support them during flight and during acrobatic movements. Actually, this is just a little too short here. And you can see this is all following the same perspective line, and I'm trying to keep the length of these all roughly equivalent, but of course they get a little shorter as they recede in perspective, a little longer as they get towards us. So this, I guess we're looking down at the bird here. Okay. And then, take all this together, you can kind of pretty quickly draw a bird in flight. And then there's a quick bird in flight. I don't really know what they're doing or what's going on, but it's a bird, So, okay. Okay, and I'm back to drawing the bird again. So, I'm going to be drawing a laughing gull, which is similar to a seagull, except it kind of has a orange beak and a gray head. And I'm just gonna get into it. Now, this is not something you need to do, but I personally like to start with kind of a bluish gray stretch. Oh my god, I can't talk. I like to start with a bluish gray sketch, and then I go to my, and then I add details in black later. But I'm kind of trying to draw a specific pose where the bird is standing but also kind of looking at the camera with one leg up. So let me load in some So more or less, this is the pose I want to do, except, I'll make a few changes here and there as needed. But, okay. So, again, start with the big overall shapes of everything. So, on a seagull, you have the head. You see here, very their head is pretty close to a circle, and then they have their brow ridge here that flows down into their beak. You get this iconic kind of seagull beak shape. And then their eyes are once again this kind of thing. sort of like that, where and from the head, because of the feathers, it's kind of a smooth cylinder all the way down to where it connects with the torso, which is down here. And then you get the body, which is this nice, big, chonky thing, which all birds have. Their big, powerful chest, and then their smooth, their smooth bellies. And then you still have this kind of two-lobed structure to the wing when it's folded down. And you can see where these white feathers here, these are the body feathers. They're not the flight feathers. They just kind of overlap a little bit. And then this is the very tip of the wing here. And then you've got the tail. Now, the feet, I want to adjust the pose a little bit. So I'm going to have the one leg will be bent up. So because this is an ankle, it bends this way. But you can't just raise one leg up without adjusting the rest of the body at all, because then it'll be unbalanced. If you have, if you think of a bird in its sort of most simple form, you get big chunky body, kind of a long neck, at least for seagulls. Not every bird has a long neck. With its beak and its eyes. And then in the case of the laughing gull, it has this gray pattern. And if you have two legs, then this will be balanced like that. But if body's a little too small, but if the bird is standing only on one leg, then the foot has to line up with the center mass of the bird. So you have to, if the leg is coming from here, you've got to angle it so it's now underneath the center mass. And then you can have this foot tucked up under there. Or if you don't want to draw the legs like this, the other thing you can do is sort of tilt the body to the side. And then you can have its other leg up. Now, you will see birds when they're walking, they'll waddle back and forth like this, they'll go side to side. But if it's just standing there, it'll be more straight up and down like this. So I'm going to draw more this kind of pose, but I want to have it in a 3/4 angle, but with its head still facing the camera like that. So I have reference of the bird's face here. Which I'll bring in. There we go. And you can see again, it's really quite round, the head. And that's for, biological reasons and for aerodynamic reasons as well. But the beak, it's very interesting how the bottom jaw, the way the feathers kind of wrap around everything. It almost looks a bit like, Megatron or something, where it's a really interesting kind of shape. And this is something that I'll have to pay attention to so that I'm drawing a seagull and not, some other kind of bird. And then if you think of the planes of the skull of the bird, it's not a perfect sphere from all angles. Or it's not a perfect sphere. It's more like, if I'm drawing it sort of like this, the eyes kind of form this shape where the eye socket is in there, and and you end up with a nice concave shape here, and it leads all the way up to the beak and the mouth. Right, so that's why you get the little overlap of feathers here like this, the way you see it. And from the front, you can see just how small the eyes of a bird are. Birds have evolved for their eyes to be on the side so that they have 360-degree aerial vision, or very close to it. So they see almost right around to the back of their head, like you'll see in a lot of prey animals. Except in the case of birds, it's for aerial mobility and for avoiding becoming food for a bigger bird. So if I put all of that together into one drawing, then I'm gonna I'm gonna draw fairly small so I get the whole shape of the bird to begin with. And I'm gonna start with the body, cause I'm not following the reference of this image exactly. Or this image exactly. I'm using it just as a sort of general reference. But everything more or less in this area, I can follow the image closely. So I'll start with that. Okay, so there's our body. And then I've got one leg that'll be on the ground and one leg that'll be raised up. So I think I'll put more or less this foot will be staying down, except I'll need to angle it a bit more like that. And then I'm also going to put it standing in water. So if this is the water line, then I'll have to mirror it here where its feet are now coming through, and they're reflecting. And the further away you get from the contact point, the more distortion you'll get from the ripples in the water. So probably something like that. And then this foot right here is going to be raised up. But I'm not going to put it right here and then just have it go out like that, because if you think about the leg of the bird is actually kind of connecting up back here, and it's coming forward and down, and then it connects to the foot. So this is the upper leg, the lower leg, and the foot. And so if I'm thinking like in terms of the actual hips, they're sort of up here, and then it goes over to the other side. You get it over there, and then the legs connect up into the hip, and it's going to, the whole leg is going to come forward like this into more of that kind of shape. So the leg is going to be pretty far back, really. It might even appear to be overlapping, but I think I'll have it coming back, and then the ankle will be down there, and then the foot's coming forward. And now I'm trying to think anatomically. There's 3 sections, but they're very close together here and they're overlapping. There's sort of 3 toes, and they have a joint here in the middle. And then they got the bird's talon here. And then they've also, it's a seagull, so there's webbing. And then you have sort of the thumb coming off the back. Like that. And then birds have this kind of ribbed texture to their skin on their feet. And it's across their whole leg, really. Sort of just what the skin does. And I'll put some indication of that. And then now I'm going to kind of merge the neck from this angle into this angle. And then now I've just more or less got to draw in the head. Actually, no, I don't like how that neck is looking. Okay, and then we get, if I put in the center line of the face, maybe I don't want it looking quite perfectly straight on. I can put its head sort of like that, and then if I put the center line down, so if I'm looking at the bird's head, the top of the eye and the beak and the top of the head and the bottom of the head, you can more or less cut these into thirds. So I'll work from that. If this is the top of the head and this is the bottom of the head, cut it into thirds. So now this is the top of the eyes, and this is sort of the midline of the beak. Clean this up a little bit so you can see what's going on here a little more. And then now I just need to get their eyes in. So thinking again to the shape I mentioned before, where that's kind of the shape of the skull, I'll try to get that in. Now this eye, because it's turned over to the side quite a bit, you'll really only get just the very side of it. Like that. Maybe it's a little bit too far away. Okay, now I just gotta clean this up a little bit. And there's our seagull. Oh, I erased the pattern of the feathers here. And now that I have all the big shapes, now I can go in and I can start worrying about sort of the texture of everything. Add in, details for feathers and all that kind of stuff. But I think for the sake of this video, this is more than enough. And there we go. There's our seagull buddy. Okay. Well, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for bearing with some of the hiccups along the way on this one. And I hope you enjoyed and gained something useful out of it. Have a wonderful day.